people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The fallout of yesterday's action. Yesterday, Stephanie Piñeiro made her Matchroom debut on her native island of Puerto Rico, and she looked the part. She stayed in character. She did what I expected her to do, but there were some kinks in the armor. There were some drawbacks that from the middle to the end of the fight, she lost a bit of steam. I chalk it up to inexperience, but if she is to face Sandy Ryan, if that is the end game here, and that is why Matchroom signed her, then her chances at victory all depend on when the fight happens. The sooner it happens, the more it favors Sandy. The later,
Stephanie's got a better shot.
Evaluating her performance yesterday, I would have liked to see her show a little bit more spite because she's got power, and you can see she's got power, that she can land with authority, and I would have liked to have seen her build on that a little bit more and maybe spend a little bit more time in the pocket, sitting on her punches and trying to get the other girl out of there.
She needs to work on her inside game.
Because Sandy Ryan is going to try to get inside on her. She is going to try to crowd the pocket, put punches together, and she will try to land with authority. She will sit on her punches.
She's already more experienced. She's been the distance more times than Stephanie Piñeiro against a better grade, better caliber of fighters than anybody that Stephanie has fought so far, yesterday's opponent included.
Went the distance with Erica Farias 2 times, Jessica McCaskill,
Marie-Pierre Huel.
These fighters are better fighters than anyone that Stephanie has fought so far. You gotta consider that the sooner the fight happens, the more it favors Sandy. But if Stephanie is given more time to develop, 1 or 2 more 10-rounders, that might turn the tables.
Turn the tide.
Now, will Matchroom allow her that time and those fights to continue to develop is the question. How invested are they in this fighter? Why did they really sign her?
They're not as invested in every single fighter that they sign as they might be with another fighter.
Nina Hughes, then WBA champion, is a prime example. Let's be honest. They only really signed her because they wanted to give Ebony Bridges the opportunity to unify this division. With Nina herself, they didn't use Nina for very much. And after Ebony lost her IBF title, they didn't have much use for Nina, so she jumped ship and she went somewhere else. Subsequently lost her title, but that's another story.
The point is that they were not as invested in Nina Hughes as they were in either Ebony Bridges or Shannon Courtenay before her.
And they may not be as invested in Stephanie Piñeiro as they are in Sandy Ryan. That may not be why they signed her, having big plans for her. They may just be looking for an opponent they can fatten up to feed to Sandy while she waits on a bigger fight, a unification match.
Truth hurts.
Should they be invested in Stephanie? I think they should. There's a genuine opportunity there, and I'm not sure if they realize it, to corner the market on the Puerto Rican fight fans with a fighter of Puerto Rican descent. That if they put the effort into Stephanie's career that they've put into Sandy's so far,
they could turn Stephanie into a draw, and it won't take very much. Did you hear the roar from the crowd whenever Stephanie did land a punch, even if it was just a jab?
Stephanie's fight was only the second fight of the bill. I believe it was only the second fight, and there were already people there, lots of them, cheering her on.
And she's not a New Yorican or a Philly Rican. She's a Puerto Rican from the island of Puerto Rico. They know her.
Said it many times in many videos that the Puerto Rican fight fan is to the East Coast what the Mexican fight fan is to the West Coast, and they are a fiercely loyal group of fight fans.
They show up.
Not like those deadbeats and losers that support Clarissa Shields or claim to, but never purchase her pay-per-views and really don't show up to her fights. No,
they don't really watch her.
They just pretend to argue with people online. What their true motivation is, who really gives a shit?
I don't.
The point I'm making is what happens next in the career of Stephanie Piñeiro all depends on why Matchroom really signed her. Were they just looking for someone to fatten up and then feed to Sandy Ryan? in a jiffy, or do they have actual plans? Big ones for this fighter, because if they do, there's a legitimate chance they could turn her into a draw.
And she's skilled. She's got skills. She just needs experience.
Now, whether or not Matchroom will allow her that added time and those added fights to amass that experience and build on it, that's the question. Whether or not they do, that'll tell us what we need to know, because the sooner this fight happens, the more it favors Sandy. But if Stephanie is allowed a little bit more time to develop, she could really give Sandy a run for her money. She's got the style, the height, the length, the movement, and the power.
She just needs the engine. To get the engine, she needs the rounds. To get the rounds, she needs the fights.
Will Matchroom get her the fights? Only time will tell.
I'm just so happy for this moment. About a month ago, I didn't even think I was going to make it to this fight. I had a torn ligament here. Hand was injured, and I got a cut in my eye. But I said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna keep pushing through. I can't cancel this this event." And that's the reason why I wasn't throwing so much in this fight. Because as you can see from here, my hand's messed up.
Wow. Where have I heard that before?
If I didn't know better, David's reason for not doing so well, not doing so hot at 175, sounds a lot like the reason Canelo gave after he didn't look so well, he didn't look so hot with Dimitri Bivol. When he went up to 175 like David just went up to 175.
Right.
With the difference being that Canelo is an older and smaller fighter with less room to distribute the weight evenly across his body than David. No, David is noticeably taller, longer, bigger, and younger.
What's his excuse?
Oh, I get it. We're now supposed to give David Benavidez the grace that David Benavidez's fans didn't give Canelo.
Fuck out of here.
When Canelo made his light heavyweight debut, and no, it wasn't the Bivol fight. That wasn't the first time Canelo went up to 175. When he made his light heavyweight debut, he was quite literally fighting a younger man and a more experienced professional, a more experienced fighter and champion.
Because Sergey was a champion. He was WBO champion at the time.
In Sergey Kovalev. And when Canelo went up there, he stopped the guy. He stopped him. He took him out.
David couldn't take out Gvozdyk.
And when he fought Sergey Kovalev, not only was he fighting a more active fighter than Alexander Gvozdyk has been in the last 2-3 years, not only was he a more active fighter, but Sergey was coming off of 2 consecutive wins over unbeaten fighters, unbeaten Eleider Alvarez and unbeaten Anthony Yarde. He just knocked Yarde out.
So you knew that Sergey was on the level.
He was a higher rated fighter then, when Canelo fought him, than Gvozdyk is now, after David fought him. Except that David is younger and bigger.
Why do they set the bar so exceptionally low for David Benavidez?
Same reason they do it for Gervonta Davis, and the same reason they did it for Errol Spence Jr. before he got beat, before he got exposed. Because they're all in. They've already spent so much time talking up this fighter, they can't go back. The same people that put David Benavidez on a pedestal are the exact same people that put Wilder on a pedestal. Now, what does David Benavidez, Deontay Wilder, Errol Spence, and Tank Davis have in common?
The PBC.
The PBC is what they have in common, because they're all PBC fighters. So this push and this effort to validate David Benavidez for what was a mediocre performance has everything to do with their undying love for all things PBC and all things Al Haymon, because they refuse to acknowledge that Al Haymon's fighters, his brand of boxer, is typically inferior to everybody else's brand of boxer, unless there is an exceptional amount of angling and chicanery.
Mediocre!
It's the only way that you can keep them fighting, and it's the only way that you can keep them winning.
Mediocre!
What I saw yesterday is that David is not the puncher at 175 that he is at 168, and even at 168, I don't think he was a bigger puncher than Canelo, because Canelo stopped Caleb Plant. David Benavidez didn't.
Mediocre!
Canelo stopped a 36-year-old Sergey Kovalev. 36. David couldn't stop a 37-year-old Alexander Gvozdyk.
Mediocre!
These are not my opinions. These are facts.
Mediocre!
You can't distinguish the two because you don't want to. You want to keep putting this guy on a pedestal for no other reason than he's one of Al Haymon's boys. What remains of Al Haymon's boys? What remains of Al Haymon if he's still even in boxing? Because rumor has it that he isn't. And Louis DeCubas is now the one running the show.
I don't even know that David Benavidez would make it past Anthony Yarde or Callum Smith.
Not based on how he looked with a 37-year-old Alexander Gvozdyk, who I admit is a good fighter, still good, still capable, still formidable.
I don't deny saying that before the fight, after the fight. Hell, I think he won the fight. But that's the point.
For the reputation that David Benavidez has and the air around him that he's supposed to be this monster, he didn't look like a monster yesterday. You think I'm the only one that thinks so? Boxing insider Rick Glacier said David Benavidez needs to not poke the bear and stay away from Artur Beterbiev. Despite being 39 years old, there's some very compelling reasons why Beterbiev is 20-0 with 20 KOs and has been a world champion for 7 years. Yes, Beterbiev is injury prone, but when he climbs through those ropes, he's 100%.
You couldn't look like a monster with a 37-year-old Gvozdyk, so I sincerely doubt you're going to look like a monster with a younger, much younger, fresher, and faster Dmitry Bivol.
Let alone Artur Beterbiev, who is all the things that you pretend to be without the creative matchmaking, without the angling, the constant angling. No, Artur takes on the best guys, the very best guys that are available at all times. And you don't.
Artur unified his division. You didn't. And he made it look easy. You didn't even try.
No. You waited until an older, smaller fighter came into your division, let him unify it, let him do all the legwork, so then you could start worrying about belts. So then you could wag your finger in his face about what's right and what's wrong for boxing.
David doesn't punch harder than Artur.
I'm convinced David doesn't punch harder than Canelo. In fact, didn't Dmitry Bivol say as much? That Canelo Alvarez punches harder than David Benavidez? So what is David doing?
He's throwing arm punches.
That have a noticeable effect on smaller fighters like, David Lemieux, lighter punchers like Demetrius Andrade and Caleb Plant, and bear in mind, he didn't even knock Caleb out.
He didn't. Do you want me to say it nicer? He didn't stop that guy.
And he didn't stop Gvozdyk yesterday. He never came close to stopping him. Hell, he didn't even hurt him.
I don't think he won.
David didn't win that fight.
David is a hype job.
If you are endorsing him, if you are supporting him, you're just fucking stupid.
Dumb.
Looking for a win wherever you can find one. Even if he's awarded a decision that he doesn't really deserve or he doesn't look impressive in the fight, you're gonna talk him up anyway because you're all in. You're past the point of no return.
PBC is not boxing.
It dawned on me as I watched yesterday's contest, yesterday's pay-per-view, for what it costed. When Joe Goossen's anecdotal scorecard was displayed, and he had it a clean sweep for David Benavidez after many, many rounds, it dawned on me that short of you knocking down the opponent within a round, and short of you knocking him out and taking it out of the judge's hands, they're going to score it however they want to.
The PBC shills are going to go along with whatever they say. Any excuses made after the fight, they're going to go along with that too.
So they have something to say when they argue with me and you, that in essence, the PBC isn't even boxing. It's not boxing. It's a psyop.
All these guys ever do is have bad faith, disingenuous arguments,
gaslighting, an inordinate amount of gaslighting.
It's not boxing.
When I watch a PBC show as opposed to a Top Rank show or a Matchroom show or Queensberry, hell, even Golden Boy, the glaring difference is I don't actually feel like I'm watching a boxing match.
It's more like a TV show. They're not actually selling fights or fighters so much as stories and characters.
Brands, but not boxing. It doesn't even feel like boxing.
That might very well be the last time I spend any money on a PBC show, short of some ambitious matchmaking, and I mean ambitious.
And I spend money on boxing. I buy the pay-per-views. I do.
I have all the receipts. Yesterday's box office fight might be the last PBC show I purchase.
Then again, given the sparse schedule the PBC has this year, that's not saying much. They may not exist beyond this year. Now on to what was a more legitimate victory and a more impressive one in my book that took place this past weekend across the pond in the United Kingdom. Chris Billam-Smith took on Richard Riakporhe for a second time, and to my surprise, Chris Billam-Smith was actually the better man on the night. Chris Billam-Smith got to walk away with his WBO title, and I didn't think it was going to go his way, but it did. I thought Richard Riakporhe, having fought him before and beat him before, he would have had his number.
He didn't.
He got off to a decent start in the first round, the very first round, when he was sticking the jab out there and landing the jab, but he couldn't keep it up after that. In the second, in the third, in the fourth, you saw little by little This fight was getting away from Richard Riakporhe, who was stiff and robotic, tense, not really letting his hands go. It's because Chris
was crowding him and putting him on his back foot,
flustering him and simultaneously not giving him room to work. And that's important because Richard Riakporhe, while he is the noticeably bigger puncher of the two, the stronger puncher of the two, strength and power really only matter if you can land. And to land, you gotta throw. And Richard wasn't throwing because Chris was all in his wheelhouse, all in his face, smothering him.
When they weren't tussling in the clinch, Chris Billam-Smith was playing him close and putting short punches together. They weren't dramatic punches or damaging punches, but it was enough that he was the noticeably busier guy within the round more often than not in more rounds.
And even in those moments where Richard gets through with a shot, you could see he's the stronger puncher of the two, Chris Billam-Smith didn't take it lying down. He would respond.
He responded immediately to get his lick back and regain control, as to not let Richard Riakporhe start gaining confidence or momentum.
Aesthetically, it wasn't the greatest fight to watch. There was a lot of holding and a lot of wrestling, and it was very scrappy on the inside, but you walked away knowing Chris Billam-Smith won the fight. There's no argument. 9-3 in favor of the champion,
who had a stronger corner and a better game plan. Now, maybe Richard Riakporhe, having beat him before, he looked past him and he didn't take him seriously enough. Or maybe Chris Billam-Smith has surpassed Richard, that he is a better fighter now than when they initially met several fights and several years ago.
He got better. Now, did he get so much better that I would pick him to beat Jai Opetaia or Zurdo Ramirez? No, not that much better, but good enough that he was able to avenge his only professional loss to Richard Riakporhe. After the fight and after the judges' scorecards were read, they asked him about unifying, and it seemed to me that they didn't want to know when it came to Jai Opetaia. Who they want to fight is Zurdo Ramirez, newly crowned WBA cruiserweight champion Zurdo Ramirez, and we'll see if they can get him.
Chris said he'd be willing to come to America for that fight.
If he is, I think Golden Boy wouldn't mind bringing him over. I think Golden Boy would back their man and like Zurdo's chances in that fight if he has home field advantage, or home field advantage, so to speak.
Because Zurdo's not from America, but he is based out of America.
And Chris Billam-Smith said he'd be willing to come here to fight him. It looks like they want to save Jai Opetaia for last, with good reason. If you fight Zurdo first, theoretically, and you beat him, and you have 2 alphabet titles instead of just 1, that may give you more bargaining power at the negotiation table.
To ask for more money.
Instead of coming to the table with just 1 alphabet title when there are 4 champions, 4 separate champions at this weight, I see the strategy, and let's just be honest, there's a glaring difference between fighting Richard Riakporhe or Zurdo Ramirez and fighting Jai Opetaia.
It's more dangerous, it's more tricky. He's athletic, he's a southpaw, he punches like a mule.
So it's no coincidence that they want to save him for last. That's what I figured, that by the time you do fight him, it might be worth a lot more money, and it'll be worth the risk, because to them, right now it isn't.
Congratulations to Chris, once again. He proved me wrong.